Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name's George. I'm the founder of Sharing with Care TV. That's SWC TV for short. We focus on essentially health and well-being, and that pretty much involves interviewing professionals or services that work within that particular field. We're always on the lookout for partnerships and interviewees. So yeah, please reach out on info@sharingwithcare.org. That's info@sharingwithcare.org. Sit back and I hope you enjoy the interview.
And this is part of Sharing with Care. And from our discussions, this is really talking about your background in terms of the work that you actually do. I know you've worked for many years with young people, many years with parents, and you've taken a completely new journey. So, whilst we're talking about journey, tell me what you're doing now. So, what's Paul Big Man Hira doing right now?
So currently, I am a qualified social worker in a local authority, and I've not long got my qualifications. I just recently finished my studies, and I'm currently working in access and assessment, where I'm assessing families and signposting for further support.
Okay. So in terms of the work the work that you're doing now, where did it all start from? Could you take me back in history? How did it lead up to where you are today?
How far do you want to go back?
Oh, that's entirely up to you, mate.
So from I guess from around about 11, I transitioned to secondary school, and because of the area I was in, it was an all boys Catholic school, because my mum was a strict Catholic, and so she wanted me to go to Catholic school. But I think I was pretty much intimidated by a high amount of testosterone. I'd grown up with sisters. I've got a lot of female friends. I didn't have many male friends in my life, and I was put into this all boys secondary Catholic school, which was quite strict. And there was a little bit of bullying, and it was uncomfortable to try and keep up with the lads around, talking about stuff that I probably hadn't experienced, because I didn't hang around with boys back in the day. So it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me, and I was struggling with it. And there was a drop in attendance, and other people were asking me, why don't you come to school? And the way they were asking me was like kind of like in a threatening or an intimidating way. So there was a little bit of bullying that went on. And I think just as the year was progressing, I think maybe just before the Easter in holidays in year 7, my uncle had died, and I was looking for permission to take time off. And
Okay.
and the head of year said to me, he come and told me my uncle had died, and he said, take as much time off as you need. Take as much time off as you want. And for somebody who's struggling with school, that was the acknowledgement I needed. And I took him literally. And I then refused to go to school, which caused a bit of issue for my mum, because she had trouble getting me to school. And if we look at that now, that was a lot of anxiety that I suffered. But back in the day, it wasn't seen as anxiety. It was
Okay.
just that that mum was unable to get me to school. So there must have been a lot of anxiety. So I didn't go. A lot of my life skills were learned at home. I can read and write. I managed to be able to do that, and whatever. A bit poor with maths, but anyway, we can all learn. And then education welfare had got me back into school around about year 10, so I missed a good chunk of academic schooling. So I got back into school in year 10, and it wasn't working on a little plan that they had for me. It wasn't working, and I ended up in a local pupil referral unit, which at first I thought, what have I done? Because I regretted it, because it felt like I was back in primary school at the level of work they were giving. um, but I managed to achieve a little accreditation there on maths and English. It wasn't nothing major. It wasn't any equivalent to any GCSE or anything like that. And so I completed that, and then college wasn't for me either. So I didn't attend college. So I ended up taking a couple of jobs. I was a lagger, which is covering pipes, and
Okay.
so I did that around London for a little while. I set up my own little stall. I went out on the boot sales, I was selling toys and stuff like that. And then I think around about 18, my dad passed away. So there was a lot of pressure on me then to step up. And
They've lost
from,
an uncle and your father, so that
yeah,
emotionally emotionally that's quite, and for a young person like yourself, plus there was a school, that's an impact on you in
yeah,
many
yeah,
ways.
yeah. So a big impact because of my heritage. I'm a half Indian, half English. Um, in terms of Sikh culture, the eldest son is the most important, uh, mechanism in that family structure. And I'm the
Okay.
eldest son of the eldest son. So a lot of responsibility was dropped onto me after my dad passed away.
Okay.
So money had to come in from somewhere. So still doing a little bit sort of pieces, maybe, taking odd painting jobs, clearing people's gardens, just odd jobs and that kind of thing. I think that lasted probably, alongside with job seekers allowance to probably around about 21 and the age of 21. And I think Labour had just come into power around about then, just before then. And they had the New Deal initiative. So there was a New Deal initiative where you could go, it was sort of like the old YTS scheme for those of us that
Right.
remember that. So it was like an apprenticeship, but so they put me on to this New Deal scheme, and I remembered like a mentor that I had who was trying to support me getting me back into school, and he was a pretty cool guy. I thought he was pretty cool, and I thought I just want to be like him, and I want to work
Okay.
with young people. So when I went to the
Okay.
New Deal scheme, I said I want to do youth work, and they didn't have any youth centres signed up for to support this job, and but they did have a drugs and alcohol service that worked with young people.
Okay.
I went along to there, and they were running a course that was Open College Network accredited, and it was 2 days a week training, 3 days a week, doing the practical, on the job stuff. So, and on the job stuff was going out into schools, delivering drugs education to young people alongside the PSHE, which was, in the, attached to the national curriculum. So,
So what was it like
so
delivering drug education in schools? What was the response like? You walking in, because I take it you would have been a young person yourself, walking into school, engaged with young students. What was that? What was that dynamic like?
I think it was received. I think they received it really well because we were, just a few years older than I was. Just a few years older than year 11s. Maybe about 4 years older than them. So it was like, I guess it was like they had somebody who was not a teacher, not a doctor, not somebody official that they could chat to about their issues around substance misuse.
Okay.
So I learned all that information from the complete drugs course, which I guess was my first academic course, even though it was an open college network. So I had
Okay.
no,
Okay.
so learning all that information through that course um, was what helped me support young people who were questioning, experimenting, or dependent upon drugs. So we was able to give
Right.
information. I was able to give information to slow them down,
Right.
to
Okay.
delay their use. I was able to, help them then explore what they wanted to do with it, how they wanted to use it, and I would give them, harm minimization, safety advice, just to keep them safe, so that they knew what drugs they were using and how to use them in a safe way. Yeah.
Okay. And were there any challenging moments? Because again, you're speaking to young people. You're talking about drug education, drug
Mm,
use.
mm.
I assume in the area that where you're working, there would have been high numbers of drug use. So were there what type of challenging moments did you have to face in this role?
I think the thing around harm minimization, there's that line between condoning drug use and giving safety advice. And I think that was met with a lot of resistance because it was different in terms of, the Just Say No campaign that came out through Grange Hill, because it was just say no to drugs. No, don't use
Right.
them. But this
Right.
this this message, this information was okay. If you're going to use them, you do X, Y, and Z. And I think some people at that time thought that we were condoning the use of drugs. We were saying it's okay
Okay.
to use drugs, and that was a lot of resistance that came from that. And I think schools were progressive around that time. Some teachers were really you know, struggling, I guess, with the young people that were using substances and were lacking in their education or dropping out of school or dying. So they had to look at another way of, you know, getting that information across to young people. And I think us going in, like myself going into schools, talking from, I guess, from about year 6 up to year 11, giving clear, frank information about the you know the dangers, the positives and negatives about drug use, you know, really supported young people in making informed choices. And I think that was the main focus that we had to do.
Okay.
So I completed that course, and then I moved into the coordinating of that. So I coordinated the workshop programs around the schools in that borough, um, which is really weird because I didn't want to be in school when I was younger, but now I'm in them every day. And I'm even back in the school that I used to attend. And a teacher stopped me and said, "Are you doing this because you use drugs?" Or, and I said, "No, I've never used drugs." Not forgetting that I did smoke cigarettes, but you know, it's a legal drug. It's all right, you know. So,
So
because
how was that
obviously,
journey? How was that going back into schools? Because it was an area that you were kind of, there was some resistance, and
yeah,
now you're now you had to go back into schools, and I assume it's, I don't, but your current work, but you know you're dealing with schools. How, what was that? What was that impact? That was a bit of a shock.
yeah. I think part of it was a bit of a win for me because the head teacher was still there, and he said to me that I wouldn't amount to anything, and here I am
Uh,
in front of a class of 30. So I wasn't arrogant about it, and I think the thing was about just building bridges with them. So the job started to increase, and it wasn't only young people that we started to tell about these things. So, you know,
okay,
I did teacher training. We taught
fantastic,
teachers how to see signs and symptoms, you know,
fantastic.
not necessarily, you know, that little 13-year-old is coming in late, tired because he's using drugs. There was also the creation of many games consoles around this time as well. So lots of young people
Okay.
were up late at night trying to complete a mission on a console or something like that. So there
So
was a
they've
lot
walked
of
in. So
like,
they've walked in with red eyes. It's not necessarily
yeah,
that they're
yeah,
smoking weed or anything. They've just
yeah,
been
yeah.
playing games.
Yeah,
Okay,
and they could have been playing games, and there could have been other factors that were going on at home. You know, there could have
sure,
been issues with parents using drugs. You know, homeless issues, overcrowding. You know, people are
sure,
living on
sure.
top of one another. You know, there's people. You know, I've been to families' homes where there's like 5 kids all in one room. You
Right.
know,
Okay.
so it's really difficult. So you have to take them factors into consideration. At the moment, you know, I live quite far out from London, and on my journey to work, I see London pupils going to school, and I just think that's
Right.
because of displacement. And I think they've got to travel over an hour to
To
get
get
to
to the school.
school and get back. And I think this is because there's an issue with you know, social housing and councils housing people. So they're just
Sure,
displacing
sure,
people outside of London and things like that.
sure, sure,
So
sure.
so yeah, so there was a lot of teaching of professionals. I taught a lot of nurses in local hospitals. So they were the A&E staff that when young people came in, what do they do? How do they make referrals? Um, and that would have been, you know, us making referrals into our service, because it wasn't just delivering drugs education. We also had, you know, a counselling service there to provide, you know, support for these young people to, you know, manage their dependency, addiction to them substances. So yeah, so there was a lot of like, and then a lot of professional training, and then came, you know, the parent training. And how we got to the parents was by being community based. So I was out in the community every little town show, festival, a community event. I would ensure that we were there with our replica drugs case, so that parents could see some of the paraphernalia that
Okay.
they might have spotted across their children's rooms or something like that. So they could identify some of the paraphernalia, signs and symptoms, and they could call us for help. And so it was a service that could be contacted. Parents could be supported, children could be supported. So yeah, it was yeah, that's I got to that bit. That's it. I don't know what the other question.
Fantastic. So where, so it seems that, so you've shared a lot in terms of where it's all started. So in your journey from work, from being a workshop coordinator, where did it lead you from there? I assume you obviously left the organization. What was your next step?
Yeah, so the passion for youth work was always there, and
Okay.
I left that organization and I went to another agency organization in the same borough, and this is
Okay.
due to funding. Funding, they closed one service, refund another one, and I moved across, and I was then working with young people that were in alternative provision. They were in PRUs, so these people were more likely to be exposed to violence or criminal activity, or because they're not in mainstream school 9 to 5. It's a shortened timetable and things like that. So the work turned to working with pupil referral units and their parents, and that was a link to children's social care. But my passion there was my real passion was to do youth and community work, and
Okay.
and that was where I wanted to start when I did the New Deal stuff back in 90, I don't know, 2000 or something. I can't remember the years, when I was 21 anyway. And
Okay.
and the opportunity came up to do the youth and community course, which was linked to the YMCA, so George William College there. However, I did my diploma through Cornell of North East London, and I achieved my youth and community diploma.
Fantastic.
So this is probably more of a kind of an academic education course than the Open College Network.
And that's a big
Um,
achievement considering this little Paul that's gone through so much, his journey in education.
mm,
You've taken a lot of time out. You said you've even experienced being in the Peru, and now there you are you
yeah,
managed to achieve a diploma.
yeah,
That's a
me.
big win. Yes, you, Paul.
It's a big win. Yeah, me.
That's why
Yeah,
Paul referred to you as Big Man Hero.
I think I missed out a little bit. Because the youth work did come, I think, just after. So I was teaching the course that I was taught on around the drugs and alcohol information for a local drugs charity. And to be a teacher, you needed some kind of teacher's degree. And I did
Okay.
my like teaching for adults is a stage 4, which then could have led on for me to doing the PGCE.
Okay.
But I completed that teaching for teachers through City Lit. So I had this teaching for adults, qualification, and then I did my youth work qualification, and I was working in charities, and charities, are good places to start. They're very community based and they interface with everything. So they hospitals, doctors, police, wherever. So they interface with the community. They're part of the community, and I secured a job in a local authority as a drugs worker, as a treatment
Okay.
officer, and
Okay.
so the youth work degree helped. The youth work diploma helped because I think it gave me a little leverage into that position.
Okay.
And it was sort of similar. It was delivering drugs education, it was teaching professionals, and it was doing one-to-one one-to-one support with young people. So we were doing motivational interviewing. I was doing motivational interviewing.
What does that involve? Motivational interviewing. What would that involve?
So this is looking at their ability to change, I guess,
Okay.
their willingness to change. So looking at how, where they are on the cycle of change, if they're in pre-contemplation or they're contemplating a change of their use. And I would work with them over a number of sessions, whether that's 6 or 12, 3 months or so on. And we would work with young people, young adults, even up to the age of 25,
Okay.
to support them with their motivation to change. So using techniques and tools from asking them the miracle question: if they woke up tomorrow and they stopped smoking,
Okay.
what would be different? So getting them to look at some of what they would notice that's a change. And I guess that we got a lot of movement on using motivational interviewing, doing a bit of mentoring with young people, supporting people into like other avenues. So if they're on the street, they're smoking weed and they want to stop, we look at what skills they got and just try and enhance them, try and look in the community for resources. So had one young man who he was an entrepreneur, George, right? I took him to an employment event like run by the local authority youth provision, and
Okay.
they could give them a little bit of money to start their own
Okay.
business. And what he
Fantastic.
was doing, he was collecting bikes from around, like just abandoned bikes from around London,
Okay.
fixing them up, selling them on. And he said he was going to be a global entrepreneur. I hope he is today. I don't know. Um, but he applied for some of that funding and he got his little bike project off the ground. Um,
Fantastic.
but
Fantastic.
what that did was that reduced the amount of free time he had for smoking weed, and it gave him something
Okay.
positive in order to focus on. So the job, the his global enterprise became probably more of a habit or a addiction than the substance that he was using.
A
So
positive focus, a
yeah,
positive
yeah,
outlet.
yeah. He's not on the street. He's not just chilling with his friends. He's making something for himself and his children and things like that. Yeah,
That's fantastic. Paul, I've noticed in terms of your work, it's like, for me, it's like what you're doing, it's invaluable. You're working with individuals who I will describe as, these are like the hidden voices. These are just kind of shunted and put to one corner of society.
yeah,
That will demand a lot of skill on your part. So how do you approach building trust? Because they could think, well, yeah, this is professional, and he might, although from what you're saying, you have definitely a deep understanding, a passion for the work that you do. But somebody, if I was a young person on the street, you've come up to me, and I'm thinking, well, who is this guy? He looks very well presentable. Is he a police officer?
everybody
Is
thinks I'm fed. Everybody.
So your
There's,
approach, what's your,
yeah,
because there's obviously you're using a real amazing skill to engage, and clearly from what you're saying, you're building relationships.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what do you say?
So
What's your approach? What's your approach? What would you
I
describe as your
think I
approach?
think open and honest communication is probably the main thing. I think communication is the key,
Okay,
and I think it's about meeting young people where they are. So if I met them in school, I've met them on the street. I've done detached outreach. I've been out there on the cold, rainy nights in the dark corners of parks.
okay,
Talking to groups of young people, asking them what they want to do, spotting some risky behavior. Maybe there's a group of 5 or 6 15-year-olds, but there's a 30-year-old in the group, and you think, who's he? And
right, okay,
you think about, who's this guy here? And there might be some exploitation or some grooming happening. So you have I've had open and frank conversations. I can build a good rapport with young people. um
okay,
I think the thing is about, I was in a school once, and I was delivering a session, and this young person put a hand up, and I said, yes, well, like, I think she's going to ask a question about drugs, and she said, do you live in this borough? And I was
mm,
like, well, not this borough. And she said, well, how comes you sound like us? And I said, because I'm from East London. This is how we speak in East London. And I think because they could ask personal questions, or they could approach us like they would approach a friend or an uncle or an auntie or something like that. I think that built a bit of trust with them. I think, and returning every week, when I said I'll be
right,
back next week, I came back next week. Maybe they had people that have
okay,
promised them stuff. Maybe
right,
they're like the little children that's waiting for their dad to pick them up on the Sunday, but Sunday he doesn't come, or their mum
right,
doesn't
okay,
turn up. So it did, a bit of consistency, knowing that they're in the borough, and they can approach us at any time.
okay,
They can text us, they can call us, they can come to our project and things like that. So I think it's about just being, open, honest communication, being consistent, and being there when they got fruit flies. Sorry, Being- they're so annoying. Being there when they needed to talk, when they were having a crap
okay,
day. So, and they might not been able to do that at home. Maybe at home is not a great environment. Maybe
okay,
mum's partner's in the home and he's abusive, or there's
okay,
drink or drugs. So that maybe this was their you know, their family that they had created, you know, me as a worker that
Right.
they knew they could come and speak to.
Okay. So fast forward to where you are now, because clearly you've got many years of experience and years of substance
Yeah,
misuse and alcohol.
we,
So
yeah.
where are
So
you now in
the
in
thing
your
is, George, you know, I was a young carer from a proper really young age. You know, I'd cared for a sick mum, and in that time of having a disabled mother, there was a lot of social care in and out of my house. A lot of
okay,
social care, not necessarily for, you know, our my safeguarding, but for helping, you know, my mum to be able to be live in her own home while
mm,
she's, you know, as you know, so she can get upstairs, and there's adaptations and things like that. And I
well,
think in 2011 I said I want to do that job because I want to help people. I want to help people who are in their own home that can't even get to, they can't even bath. You know, the carers, because they haven't got a wet room or their bathroom is 4 floors up or whatever. Carers were coming in and taking people to the local swimming baths for showers in the morning. And I, you know, and I
okay,
thought, you know, with the right assessment, and if there's enough funding, people can have their own wet room. And I thought, you
okay,
know, and this social worker appeared, and she did like an assessment on my mum's care and support needs. And I thought, you know, I want to do that, and I wanted to do that in 2011, and I wasn't successful to be put through for an apprenticeship at um, with my local authority to do that social work degree. Um, so the opportunity came up again 3 years ago, and I contemplated it. I asked George. I said, "What do you know? Should I do this, George? I don't know. What should I do? How will I be able to manage studying and things like that?" And I haven't done an academic kind of assessment ever. So, you know, when they say you've got to cite people and you have to reference people, this grey hair started to appear a lot more. It was a bit more, you know, stressful for me.
more of a challenge.
So more of a challenge. So I successfully made it through into the apprenticeship. I was
Mm,
interviewed by the lecturers at the university, and I was to start the course in September 2020. Um, but this was at a time when we were in global pandemic.
oh wow, okay,
So so it was very difficult to build a rapport with people through this kind of platform.
okay,
Yeah, to
okay,
assess young people's safety in their home environment through a video camera. It was very
right.
challenging. It was very difficult. So my first placement was with family support, and I went out, and I felt like I was telling parents off. I felt like I weren't actually helping. I was just telling parents,
Don't do
"You're
this, don't
rubbish.
do that.
You're no good. You don't get your children up." And I felt that this is not what I signed up for. I signed up to support these people. And George, some parents need a telling off. They need to be
Yeah.
told that, you know, they're not good, and they need to you know, to fix up a little bit, and they can fix up because here's the support we've got. Yeah. So, but
So
in
do
the
they respond
pandemic,
when you're being very direct with them and it's online? Are they responding or are they just clicking off?
oh no,
What's
they're
their responses?
responding. They're responding, and they're responding because of two things, I think. One thing is they're fearful because we're social care. We got this
Okay,
title of social care, and social care, as far as everybody's aware of, but misinformation sort of. But they, you know, they take your children away.
right,
That's
okay.
that's the, you know, I turned up at a house recently, and the mum had packed the bags for two children, and I said, where am I to take them? You know,
So she was
and
expecting you because
she was so
who you
fearful.
represent.
Yeah, yeah. So fearful that I'm going to take them. And I said, no, I'm going to work
So
with
sad.
you in order for you to support your children.
Fantastic.
So, so, so yeah, so I did a bit of family support work, which is short intervention. We look at the community around, we see what's available. You know, we might go in, I might go in, help, you know, get a chart up for, you know, little Tommy who's been misbehaving, he's not going to school, and we do a reward chart, or we look at routines and boundaries and things like that. So using a lot of parenting skills to support the parent to parent the child. in a positive kind of way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Then we can use the resources of parenting programs, support, parents learning how to communicate between one another, how to speak to the children. So there's a lot of support out there that parents can access that some parents probably don't even know about. Because of the shift in communities, there's so many. It's such a transition. I can't say that word.
Transition.
Yeah.
Oh, I know the
Transient
word.
community.
Oh,
Yeah.
transient. Okay.
Yeah, it moves a lot. That person could
Okay.
be your neighbor next week, and they're gone because the landlord's decided to issue Section 21, or they're selling the house
Okay.
or something. So
Okay.
communities now, it's very unlikely that you would know your neighbors in where you live, or
So that's
you have this.
impacting on parents' well-being as well as the children,
Yeah,
because there's no stability in
yeah,
what you're describing here.
yeah. So people can be moved very quickly if they've not got enough, universal credit to pay, their rent, or they've been sanctioned because they've got, they're depressed, or their anxiety, and they can't get to the job center to do a
Sure.
restart interview. So
Sure.
there's a lot of oppression placed upon parents that are unable to do stuff, or they might have had an ailment, they've got a hip problem, a back problem, and they're unable to,
Sure.
walk from here to there. But because they have to walk from here to there, they have to get there. So the system is not helping people as much as it could do. It's more
Oh,
of
this
a
isn't. Sorry, you're going to say sorry.
yeah, it's more of an oppression on them.
Your journey. Well, your journey. You've really come. You've taken some really interesting roads from your own schooling all to where you are now.
Mm.
The thought that's come to mind now in terms of how you manage your workload and your own emotional well-being. How do you how you
Mm.
imagine? Because like the reality is, it's not going to change overnight in terms of
No,
support for
it's
parents,
it.
support for children. What come to mind for me is burnout. How are
Mm.
you juggling the two to prevent
Yeah.
yourself from burnout? Because you're clearly an amazing worker. You're an individual, and I believe, and we've had this conversation already. There needs to be more people like you who are very passionate and bringing lots and lots of skills and experience to the industry. But how are you managing your own the balance between professionalism and personal to avoid burnout?
I just on the an amazing worker, just on that bit, is about knowing your community. I
Okay,
think the thing I'm blessed with is because I've been in the community, and I
okay,
know what resources are out there. So I know
okay,
I know what services are about, whether they've shrunk in size or they've grown. So I know that service over there has got a mentoring program, maybe for a diverse community, young black boys, young dads,
okay,
all of that.
okay,
So I'm able to say, okay, you're a young dad, you may need this support. Maybe you should. Oh, here's the number for this person who works at that service. If you don't want to go there, I can take you there. And that's a lot. And that's where
fantastic.
we are around about burnout, because while I'm still in my early days of social care, I'm on a protected caseload. So I don't have full caseload. Some social
Okay,
workers got up to 30 children, that's spread
wow,
over a number of families. Some are
okay,
higher than that. So I'm at the moment I'm on a protected caseload. So I have the opportunity of taking this person to the youth centre, introducing them to youth workers. So at the moment I have that. I think the issue is with balancing work life and that. I've had these conversations over the last few days around not the thoughts of the families are in my sleep. I'm dreaming about them. So like I wake up in the morning and then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do that for this one, that for this one. So at the
mm,
moment I'm trying to learn new ways of trying to take breaks from of speaking about the families when I finish my job. But it's very difficult because the job is not 9 to 5. It's not a 9 to 5.
You're
It
dealing with
is.
people's lives, aren't you? So,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah, yeah,
that's a 24/7 cycle.
yeah. So I might leave at 5:30, But then at 8 o'clock, I wonder, oh, how's that young person doing? Is he being fed tonight? And then I think about, did they go to that food bank that I sent them, the two, or did they use the vouchers that we gave them at Tesco's to get food and things like that? So these thoughts happen. The other thing is what I learned, like when I was training, is to work a period of time, take a couple of weeks off, work a period of time, take a couple of weeks. But what
Right.
I'm very structured, George, in terms of my annual leave, and this was because of my mum was a Catholic, so I would have Easter off, I would have Christmas off, I would have 2 weeks in the summer that we would go away as a family, a holiday and whatever. And we're in August now, and I've never had 24 days. I've got there's 32 annual days that I'm 35 now because I've been there a while, days that I'm entitled to a year, so I still have 24 to take somewhere between now and April. And I've
Oh,
never had
wow.
24 days at this point ever in my working career, and I'm worried that I might not be able to take them. I might not be able to use them all because the job is too busy. So I need to figure out. So while I'm learning, I'm also learning how to support myself through that. So a lot of communication with my line manager, supervision, and a lot of I'm trying to do a lot of other stuff. I'm because I was at home a lot when I was younger. I lived in a council house. We used to have a lot of repairmen come round. I think a couple of their names was Bodget and Leggett. So they'll do it and then they'll disappear. So as like a 13, 14-year-old boy, they might be coming to fix a door, or they might be plumbing a radiator, or fixing a window, or something, plastering a wall, and there would be this little 13-year-old me just staring at them what they were doing. So I do a little bit of DIY here. I'm not showing you it now. It's not the greatest. I haven't adopted the budget Leggett rule, but I think that will do. That will do. It's done. It looks all right.
I don't think the budget and leg would work very well in your own home with your wife as well, Paul, somehow.
Yeah. So I can't. There's nowhere to leg it. Yeah. So I budget a lot. So I try and do some jigsaws, but yeah, it's timing. Because we need. What I found about the job is, because it's supposed to be a caring, supporting job, I found that I tend to write about families more than I see them, and that's a little bit of issue. I think I'm writing more about them than I am having interactions with them or doing what I thought I would be doing as a social worker.
So you'd prefer to have more of the interaction, the face-to-face.
Yeah, I mean,
social
work is community based. We can't do our jobs without the community around us. We can't do that without speaking to other professionals, teachers, doctors, whoever, family members, youth centers, whatever. I'm unable to do my job without the support of community.
Okay.
It's just a different style of community work that I'm used to. I'm used to being in the community, in the parks, on the road,
of course.
in the schools, and that. I'm tended to be emailing teachers more to get information about a young person, or how does mum present when she comes to the school. And that's another thing I find about it, is a lot on the mums. It's a lot of pressure on mums. How is mum when she picks up these kids? Does mum communicate with schools? And dads are sometimes, they're missed out of these assessments because they're not present, or they're not about, or they're not willing to engage, or things like that.
Right. So you think there's more work should be needed to bring the fathers into the picture rather than
definitely. We need to look at ways of including fathers in a positive way into assessments if it's safe to do so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, and I'm conscious of time, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But you mentioned that in terms of your work, you like to be involved in the community. So if you are engaging with a particular client group, young person or families, you can signpost them to go to this service, go to that service. Is that something, do you feel, more needed across all services working in the community? Say, for example, whether I was a youth worker or a social worker or youth offending team worker, you think it's do you think that should be
Yeah,
priority on the
definitely.
list?
I did a stint in youth offending team, and I think that, with the I think you need this support. You need this toolbox of what's around. I think COVID has been a major impact on people's mental well-being, emotional, mentally, and services that were there before are not there now. People, some projects may have had to close, or there's not money for them, or things like that. I mean, even the way the world is changing at the moment, an elderly couple might go to the bank to speak to their, the bank manager, or a bank advisor. But more and more this is being reduced, and banks are being closed. So you go to the supermarket now, you're not meted by a cashier. So somebody who's got, maybe on the spectrum, got autism, is in supported housing at home, and their only communication, they've got no family, their only communication is the cashier, the checkout person at a supermarket. And more and more I see these are getting, they're getting computerized. You have to do it yourself. So a lot of people have got skills, to work in a supermarket as checkout, but there's no jobs for them because it's all by computer.
Right,
Because
and not many people will have computerized skills as well.
no,
It's
no, no. Yeah. So I
okay.
think some things, like in terms of, maybe having a chat with somebody who you meet on a regular basis, and you can talk about, oh, I don't know what to do about, my young person, he's doing this, she's doing that. And I think some of that is missing from the community. People have been displaced, whole families have been moved out of London because they can't be housed in London. um
Mm,
you know
mm,
Young entrepreneurs are moving into London, and their focus is, to, their money. They're not having children. Schools are not getting the intake of children like they had anymore. Schools are being
mm,
closed down,
mm,
things are being combined.
mm,
That school there may become flats in the future, and
mm,
apartments, like really expensive
mm,
apartments. And that school might have had an after school club, or it might have had a breakfast club, or it might have had, something that happened in the community. So
mm.
them things are missing. I cannot do my job without a good community resource
That's
that's diverse to meet the needs of young people, of
that's
families.
That's quite amazing from what you're saying. Because there's I don't know what country in particular, but I know there's an old African proverb that it takes a
Yeah, yeah,
community to raise a child.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what
yeah.
you're
I was going
saying
to
there,
say that, but I forgot.
no, it's okay, it's okay. But you kind of like, you kind of explained it and expressed it on along those lines. So without the community, so even the good work that you're doing, if the community is broken or displaced, it's going to undo all the. If anything, to me, it feels like the problem's only going to get potentially worse.
Yeah, I think unless there's a change in terms of society, and politics, with the risk of, the losing our European Court of Human Rights in this country, there's going to be a lot
Mm,
of people affected by that. And
mm,
I think, without being too political, there's, the narrative is on people like my dad that arrived here many, many years ago,
mm,
that provided, that was, educated at doctor level in India.
mm,
And he drove a train here. He drove the district line train. He kept London moving, I guess.
mm,
And
mm,
so people like my dad who came here are not welcome. They're not,
mm,
they're not seen as welcome. And
mm,
that has a major impact, on, I guess, some of my work included, like, working with people with no recourse. And
mm,
I felt that was in them rows there. I felt I was doing a lot more to support them people in
mm,
terms of safeguarding their children that
mm,
are British citizenship, but they're not. So safeguarding them in terms of helping parents to, obtain asylum in this country. And
mm, mm,
because who knows where they've come from, what trauma they've experienced. And I
mm.
think, yeah, and I think, yeah, maybe things are going to get a lot worse before they can get a little bit better.
I agree.
you know
Paul,
yeah.
speaking to you's been amazing, and I feel really honoured and I've known you for many years now. For the best
Too
part,
long.
we probably nearly 20 years now, if anything, probably over 20 years. So I'm, but every time I speak to you, you always give a new side to a story, and you always enlighten me and educate me. Um, but I'm conscious of time, and I could speak to you forever.
I could go on forever. Don't worry.
Yeah, yeah. You've always been good at chatting. There's no
And I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing with working with my
completely,
family.
completely,
Yeah,
completely,
I can.
completely,
Yeah,
completely,
I
completely.
use a lot of listening skills as well. And I think the main thing
You have
is
those.
if you know your borough you're in, you'll know the
Yeah,
issues that are in the borough, and you're able
yeah.
to support them families that are in that borough, because you would have a good grasp of knowledge of the borough. And I think that's where I'm lucky, because I've worked across London. I'm familiar with most boroughs, and I call it infiltrating. I'm able to infiltrate within the community. I'm able to get in there,
That's
whether
okay.
that be, you know, a Bengali community, a Muslim community, a Jewish community. I'm able to build relationships with people in them communities, and then once you're able to do that, then you know where. Oh, the mosque in East London, it provides this for, use this, your family. You can go there at this time. Just things like that. The church over there does, Sunday food lunches or whatever. You can, it's just, I'm just making examples. They don't, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think a lot of that comes down to and I always, even my work, I talk to students about passion, and without passion, your work's pretty much dead. And even if you're being paid a lot of money, without the passion,
I'm
even the
not.
money doesn't feel great. I think for you, let's
I'm
not have a
not.
political have a political political
I think the
discussion.
other thing is
But
is
your
that
passion
I'm
is
I'm nosy as well. I'm curious about. So
okay,
if I walk past a center, I think, what's going on in there, and I would go in. Like I
okay,
said, in previous roles, I probably had more time to do that. In this current role as a social worker,
okay,
I do not have time to do that. Um,
okay.
so they're the things I noticed that are a little bit different, in terms of me being able just to say, I've got 10 minutes here, because I don't have 10 minutes, because I've got to get back to write up case notes
Right,
and
okay,
assessments and things like that. So
okay.
they're the things I noticed, that which I don't want to lose, but I need to, unless I find a way of being able to do them things, they're not going to happen for much longer.
So if I was like, again, I'm really conscious of time here. So if I was somebody that was new to London, let's say for example I'm coming from a northern town, it seems to me if I decided to enter work in social care or any type of client facing work, it seems, based on what you're saying, it seems that it's important for me to understand what's in my borough, what services
Yeah,
currently exist
yeah.
in my
What is
borough.
there? Yeah, yeah,
That seems like a priority
yeah,
number one, rather than just work with the individual
yeah.
and maybe look through a book and say, "Oh, try that place." I should actually get myself out there, engage with those services
If they can,
if they
there's
can.
time restraints. There's a very low retention, and recruitment is very difficult for social care at the
Okay,
moment. And
okay, okay,
I think we spoke about burnout, and I think COVID showed that there was a different way of working. And we're hybrid working now. Yeah. So this here is 2-3 split, maybe 1-4 split, whichever, depending on requirements and going out, and legal proceedings and things like that and whatever. So it's a lot of people moved out of London because they were furloughed. They didn't get their income. So rents in London are high. They're very high, and so a lot of
sure,
people have
sure.
moved out of London, um, or either gone back to a family home or things like that. So retention and recruitment are very difficult for social care at the moment. So
Okay,
it is very difficult for a new social worker to come into a borough and then spend like a week or two, mapping out, going out in the community. I think boroughs, what they used to do when they employed people, is they did a tour of their borough. And I think that was very useful. That's a day. I think maybe some of them could reintroduce that. A walking tour,
okay,
because you can't drive anything older than because of the emission zones in London. But they can get them to cycle around the borough, things like that. Them initiatives are really good, and I think they're useful for somebody coming in. I remember, George, I went for a tender. A tender is a contract with a local authority for
okay,
a drug service, and I think
okay,
it was in Kent. And we had the Olympics that had come to London, and these young boys from Kent had come into the Olympic area, and they were greeted by police and dogs, and they were pretty scared.
mm,
And they
okay,
they asked how would we, build that, how would we build that rapport, that trust between police and young people. And it is about, when I did a lot of drugs education sessions, there was a session around drugs and the law. And I know the drugs and the law. I know about stop and search, and we were telling people what rights they had and things like that. But Better Place was a police officer. So I worked with a police officer to come to school, to come to youth
Brilliant.
centres, to do that
Brilliant.
session. And that was trying to build that relationship with, the local police officers, in terms of like, peeling down some of them barriers or boundaries of like they're just going to arrest them and things like that. So it's about inclusion. It's about including people into, your services. Those that can help you to deliver stuff are best placed. If there's a nurse, I'm rambling now. I did a festival group because I worked in a very expensive part of London, and a lot of young people went festivals, and we knew they were going, and we knew they were going to use drugs, and the most important thing was to keep them safe while they're at that festival. So
Right.
I wrote and designed a 6-week program, and that festival group looks at drugs information, what they need to take with them, in terms of like maybe they might need a little first aid kit, they need water, they need, stuff that will keep them safe, a tent if they're going to sleep out at a festival, and
Right.
first aid. We covered first aid as well, and I got St John's ambulance in. They came in
Brilliant.
to help. I got somebody from a festival to come in and talk about their rules and regulations, and part of the process is that a local festival would give us tickets for them young people to attend that festival,
Brilliant.
because they had learned all of these skills and stuff like that. And that's another element of networking in a borough, that a festival that's gonna, some boroughs have got festivals running throughout the whole of like the summer,
Mm,
but because it's local initiative, local people are considered first. So it's
mm.
just about looking at what young people are doing, supporting them the best way we can, and trying to keep them safe. If they're using drugs, if they need support with their, families and things like that, then it's looking at how we can keep them safe up to a point where
Okay.
law and legislation will need to come in to protect them and things like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And to thank you again, Paul. And to on our final question, please keep it short. Final question. What message would you like to give to parents watching this recording?
It's really short now because I'm blank. Parents, it's work with us. It's work with social care. We're here to support you, whether that is, through a robust plan, or through, we're here to support parents to raise their children. That's what we're here to do. And if they're unable to do that, then we support them, looking at ways that we can, you know, get a wider family to support them. So work with us, because it's
Okay.
better to work with us than, I guess, than
Against.
refuse completely. Yeah, because refuse
Totally. And
completely just makes us worry more.
okay, that's good,
Yeah,
good answer.
yeah.
And one last question for a young person looking at this recording. What would you say to a young person that's really down, particularly in today's times? What lasting message would you give to a young person watching this recording?
There are services out there that will support you. I think you don't have to go out to your local, providers. Technology is here. We have apps that can support you through, emotional well-being, things like that. You can have talking therapies. You speak to your GP. The most important thing is you're talking about your feelings. You're talking about your emotions, whether that's with a teacher, whether that's with a youth worker, whether that's with a friend. If you're worried about drugs, you've got the National Drugs Helpline, which is Frank. You can contact them. If you're worried about your parents, behavior, or that, you can contact, your local youth center. You can speak to, social care services are there to help you. And yeah, you might end up meeting me. Yeah, who knows?
So
Yeah.
basically, a young person, even parent, they're not on their own. There are services out there to
Yeah,
help.
and I think the world is a lot smaller because of technology. You know,
Okay.
I get all my dance moves from TikTok, so you know, other platforms are available.
That's another recording. Oh,
And I
brilliant.
think there's a lot of information out there to, you know, young people need to be kept safe on these platforms. So they need to,
True.
you know,
Very true.
even if they're using, you know, social media and they're being bullied or they're being trolled or they're being, you know, asked to do something, you know, they can report this. They can report this, and it's
We get
just about
suppressed.
keeping them safe. Yeah,
Totally
that's it.
agree.
Yeah,
Okay, Paul, thank you so much for this interview. It's really valuable, and I'm really looking forward to get the information out there. And yeah, continue the great work, and let's keep talking. Thank
cool.
you.
Thanks, George. Yeah, cheers.